Morning, guys. I hope you're doing well. My name is Dr. Nanette K. Hartley. Please call me Nan. You'll see my name in quotations. For legal reasons, we have to have both of them, the legal and the preferred name. I will be your instructor for Chem 110. I am not very formal. I hope you can tell that from my hair. I'm not very formal. Don't worry about that. Any questions you guys have, questions, comments, problems, anything, please let me know. Communication with me is essential to being able to succeed in this course. So if you're having any kind of problems, I can help, but only if I know that you're having problems. So having preached a little bit about that, I'm going to go ahead and show you around a little bit. This is our general introduction. After this, we'll be doing an introduction to Alex. I will give you some important information, stuff you need to know about in the shell, quizzes, things like that. I will do an introduction to the discussion. I'll talk about what to do when, and I'll give you some lab information. All of that will be coming, so a couple of videos and you should have everything you need. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that I can talk about what's going on in our shell. So this is our Chem 110 shell for this course. What I'm going to be talking about is all in here. Now this announcement about it being under construction will go away. So the first thing you should see is these start here. Any of the links that are in here you can open. I'm viewing this as a student right now so that you can see what you guys would see. One of the things I need to point out to you before we walk through the start here part of it is that if you click on the content, this is what you will see. Now I will show you how we get that to change. So all you'll see at this point is the course documents. There's everything in these course documents that you need for doing some of the things that I've asked you to do in the start here. All right. When we come back and we go to this announcement that is the start here, it says, I want you to review the materials outlined on this checklist. So we come to the checklist. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. There's information about me in the bio section. You guys can read that introduction and then post one for yourself. Please introduce yourself to me. There are a couple of questions that I need to add to that. I want you to tell me who you are, what your major is, any general information that you have. Do you or do you not like math? Are you good with equations or not? Because that helps me if I'm helping you on course stuff. And then I want you to use one word to define yourself. You get one word to define you. My word to define me is stubborn. The reason I say that is because occasionally I get fixated on an idea when I'm trying to talk about something and I don't necessarily hear what somebody's saying to me. And sometimes I have to be reminded, hey, take a step back. That's not what I'm saying. So this may come into, I try to rein that in, but I can be that way. So I'm warning you in advance. Usually I find that when people choose a word, it tells me a lot about them. And that's why I ask you to do this kind of ice-breaking exercise. So stubborn, that's me. So the introductory video, once this is recorded, these will be linked here so that you will get to watch them. You'll see the department syllabus. This is the syllabus for this course. You will be asked questions about what's in all of these documents at some point, and we'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. But this is a document for the course. This is not specific to me. This is for the department. So this is everything that you need to know about this class, what you're supposed to be learning, what your grade is composed of, all of those other things. So this is the department stuff, what they expect from what we all expect from you based on this. So that's our department syllabus. And then look at our syllabus addendum. These are my specifics for stuff that you need to know. Now I split this out into a syllabus addendum, i.e. stuff that goes with the syllabus, and then course policies. So those are two different documents that you'll see. This is specific to what we're going to be doing this term. Notice that there is a discussion that goes into the lab part of this class. So the lab consists of virtual labs, post labs, and the discussions. Okay, we do have a teaching assistant. Professor Simmons is our teaching assistant for this. She is going to be available to you as an email and contact for this course. Any questions about the lab itself, you can take to her or to me, either one. But her first grading especially goes to her for the lab portion of the course. Okay. our class meetings are all through D2L. You'll have recorded lectures. I'll show you where those are. Any correspondence that you send to me, I make sure to get back to you within 48 hours. I try to be a lot faster than that. Please be aware that that correspondence may or may not be dealt with depending on when you send it to me. So I only work until 10 o'clock on Friday mornings. So if you send me an email Friday afternoon, I may not see it until Monday. Okay, so be aware that that's something that may happen. I need to update this document to reflect that, and bear with me just a moment. It's up a note. Because if I don't, I'll forget. Okay, so there's that part. As far as your exams go, since you are online, you will be taking all of your exams using the lockdown browser. I cannot make any exceptions to that. If you cannot use the lockdown browser, then you will be required to have your exams proctored by someone. Okay, that means you have to make arrangements with me so that that can happen. We cannot give you an exam without it being proctored, period. So when you take your exams, I need to see the work that you've done. So as you're doing the steps to get from what I asked you to your answer, there's scratch work that goes with that. I need to see that. I cannot give you partial credit without it. So you need to turn those in. There's a Dropbox in the assignments for those things. So I need to make sure that I have that. Okay. And you need to make sure that you've given it to me in a timely fashion. The exam window typically closes on Sunday night at midnight. I need those by Monday night at midnight so that I can start grading those exams to get them back to you. Otherwise, you won't be able to get them back. I grade all exams at one time, so I need to make sure that I have everything. The other thing that's in here, extra credit. There is no opportunity for extra credit outside of what you might be able to earn yourself on the exams. Okay, there are potential for bonus on those exams, but that's the only place that you'll be able to see it. Okay. So that's our syllabus addendum. I will walk you through the course schedule. I mean, I'm just going to refer to this. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Hopefully I won't go through all of them in as much detail as I just did there. This is everything that you need to know about what we're going to be doing when. Okay, so you'll see a lecture number, the date that that lecture is, what we're going to be talking about in that class. You'll see the chapters, that's the chapter number at the front, and the sections that are covered in that chapter that goes with that. Your textbook is available in ALEX. I'll show you that in a little bit. When we do the ALEX introduction. This is a section in D2L that all of this is in. So matter units of measure, lecture 1, notice that it's numbered to match the lecture. And then you'll see due dates. Now there are 2 due dates that are listed here. One is the recommended due date and one is the actual due date. The one in red, if you turn it in beyond that point, there is a penalty that is assigned to it. Please understand that ALEX is set up in such a way that if you turn in that assignment past that date, or if you ask me for an extension past that date, and I apply that extension, it will still think that that thing was due on that date because it was applied after the due date. I can't change that in ALEX. Okay. Now, if you ask me about it beforehand and I see it and can respond to it before it's due, not 10 minutes before it's due, because I'm never awake at midnight, then that doesn't happen. But in the event that you ask me for extra time and I give you extra time, which I often will, you will see a penalty in D2L that goes with that. I cannot fix that until the end of the semester. It will overwrite every single time because I cannot change it in ALEX. So I won't fix that until the end of the semester. You will go on a list of people that I need to fix, but that will be a problem until the end of the term. Okay, so there is a thing that happens with that. Now, the other thing you're going to see in here are the gray sections. These are the labs. Okay, so this is the lab lecture. This is the date that I expect you to be doing this. There is a lab lecture for every lab. It walks through some details, tutorials, information about those particular labs that goes with that. And that's the date that I want you to do it. You do not have to have it done. Those labs are due the following week. Okay, so they're due on the 28th is when this first set is due. All right, so they're all due at the same time. Notice that the 2 that we do in the second week are both due on the same date as well. So that's what you have to deal with for that. Not only are there the virtual labs, and they all have virtual labs, there's also a post lab. Now that post lab is set up as a quiz. It is not actually a quiz, okay? It's an open note thing that you can do. Now, since you're doing all of this based on what's in the virtual labs, that quiz typically will reflect what you did in that virtual experiment. So if you do the virtual experiment and you get to the end and you can print out the summary of what you did and then write down any calculations that you did, because it doesn't print that for you, so you have to write them down, then you'll know what to do on that quiz. I don't care if you use other resources, if you talk to other people, none of that matters. The post lab is entirely for you. You have the option to do it twice. That is perfectly fine, but that is what you will see from that. Okay, so that's how that's set up. Please know that it's open note and open resource and all of the rest of it. If you want me to sit with you and walk through it, I can do that too. I've done it in the past, and Professor Simmons may or may not be willing to do it as well. So that's your lab stuff. Okay, now, sorry, I started talking about due dates. Oh, I got to due dates and then talked about something and then skipped. So there are two due dates listed. The one in red is the one where it's actually due and you get a penalty after that. The recommended due date is 2 days after that. That keeps you up in the course. So that's where I expect you to be. I expect you to look through the material from lecture 1 before we get to lecture 2, because what we do in lecture 2 builds on what we did in lecture 1. So the expectation is that you're working with that material before we get to the next lecture. What you'll see is that there are quizzes in each lecture, not the first one, but at the beginning of every other lecture, there's a quiz. And that quiz is something that you're supposed to have completed before you watch the second lecture. When you go into that next lecture, it will have a review of everything that was on that, or something very similar to it. It may not be the exact same question, okay, but it's something very similar to that. Now, again, on your quizzes, I don't care if you use resources, whatever, doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point of that quiz is to ask you, do you know what we're going to be talking about today? I will ask you about the topics for that day. And then, did you understand what we talked about previously? And if you didn't, ask for help. Don't wait. Okay. Now, I do get that feedback in terms of who did what on what. Those quizzes are pass fail. So it doesn't matter how you do, you'll get points for taking them. But the feedback is there so that I can see how many students need additional help with that material. So I can reach out to people and say, hey, I saw that you struggled with this. Can you help with, do you need help with this? If everybody's struggling with it, I can talk about it additionally, add some lectures, talk about it that way. Okay, so there's things like that. So that's what those two due dates are for. You'll see the student holiday is here. The other thing I need to point out, your exam dates are here. There's a 2-day window for all exams. Unless you have made arrangements with me prior to that, you have to take that exam during that time. You must use the Respondus Lockdown Browser. In order to see exam 1, you must have taken the Lockdown Browser test. Okay, you won't see it otherwise. Okay, it is a condition for being able to see it. Now, again, you have to use a Lockdown Browser or be proctored. So if you can't use Lockdown Browser, if your computer is not capable of doing it, you need to talk to me. There are things that we may be able to arrange for you to be able to do that, or you have to have that exam proctored by a live person. Okay? The other thing is there's the discussion due dates. So there are 2 parts to your discussion, and I will talk about this in detail when I talk about the discussion. This is the discussion 1 due date, and then the second part is due on the last day of class. Okay, so there is that. All right, that's everything about the schedule. Let me take you back. I hate it when I lose track of what I'm trying to talk about. Here is the lab manual. Now, the lab manual doesn't apply that much to you guys, being that it's not a physical lab. But this is the lab manual. There are things in here about, what do we typically do? This is what you would, safety rules, the lab equipment. There's some questions in the scavenger hunt about what is required for that. These are the experiments that we do in the physical lab. So there's information in here that relates to all of the virtual labs that you're doing. It's not required to look at it, but there is that. Okay, so there's your lab manual. My course policies. And again, this isn't, sort of kind of like some of the same things that we've already talked about. This is a place where I put that Quizzes and tests that are taken online, you're required to use the Respond to Slackdown browser and webcam. If you can't do that, you need to make accommodations to do so. That is your responsibility. The only electronic communication that you're allowed during exams or finals is a calculator. You cannot use your cell phone. Okay? If I see you using a cell phone, that is grounds for academic misconduct. And I do have somebody who watches these exams. All right? They are paid to do so. So don't test that. That is considered academic misconduct. And while we're on that subject, a couple of other things that are considered academic misconduct. If there's someone else in the room that you were talking to about that test, that's academic misconduct. If you ask Siri or Google Nest or Alexa answers to some of these things, that is academic misconduct. Looking at another computer while you're taking a test through a lockdown browser is considered academic misconduct. Things like that. I mean, these are all things that we've seen. So make sure that we're not doing that kind of stuff. You must be signed into Alex. Alex is a required portion of this course. You must be signed into it. Please be aware that the lab is associated with the course. You cannot pass this class without the lab. The lab is all done through Alex. So therefore, if you're not signed into Alex, you cannot pass the class. So that's simple. All right. You are responsible for all your due dates. If you can't meet a due date for some reason, life happens. I get it. Communicate that with me, either beforehand or when it happens. Right? I need to know what's going on. And you can't come to me at the end of the term and say, oh, I had all these things happen, because I can't make accommodations for people who don't communicate. So if you have issues, please let me know. There may be things that we can do. Okay. One last thing, and this is absolutely important. I talked about scratch paper and needing that scratch paper to grade those exams. No scratch work means no credit. If you happen to get the right answer, I'll give it to you, whatever. But in the event that you made a tiny little mistake, and that tiny little mistake includes significant digits, then you will not get any credit for that. Okay, there is what we call a sig fig tax. So if you get the sig figs wrong, you get points taken off. If there are no units, you get points taken off. Okay? So both of those must be included for this to work. You need to make sure that you've given me that scratch work. Otherwise, I cannot give you any partial credit. It's not my job to figure out how you got to the number that you got to. It's your job to show me. So if there's going to be a partial credit given, it's for work that I've seen. Okay. I don't need to talk about the exam seating. I talked about when I will get back to you for emails. You will have your grades back for exams within 1 week. Okay. It may take up to 1 week, but you should have them within that week. Okay. No partial, no extra credit outside of tests. There will be bonus points on tests that you can do. Due dates for all materials are listed in D2L and Alex. Alex and D2L are now connected, so you can see them both. Okay. If there's anything that is going on, I need to know. Most of this stuff right here is about physical labs. You as an online class are not required to keep a lab notebook. So I have stated that. And then they're all the graded materials. Now, we will not drop any of your exams. We will drop your lowest homework. None of your quizzes are dropped because they're pass fail. So either take them or you don't. Virtual, it's another way for me to keep track of who's participating as well. Virtual labs, we drop the lowest. Post-up quizzes, we drop the lowest. Your lab discussions, neither one of them will be dropped. Final exam is departmental. Everyone takes the same exam. I have no control over that. So don't ask me about it because I don't know what's on it before I get it. What else do I need to say? So we will not drop one of your exams, but if you do significantly better on the final than you did on one of your exams, we can potentially replace that grade. Okay, that can happen. All right, so that's everything I have to talk about in the addendum. Yay, I talked way too much. I'll always do this in as much detail as I am. These are technology requirements. The reason that I list this is because these are things that we as a college expect you to either have available, know what the prerequisites are. You need to know what the minimum computer requirements are. So there are links for all of these things. These are things that you should be able to do in terms of computer skills to be able to pass this class. You need to know about the calculator requirements. So you need to have a calculator that can do base 10 logs and anti-logs. Okay, you should be, I mean, that's really the only requirement for that. And here's some student resources, because not everybody knows what our student resources are. So here's a list of resources that are available to you in the event that you need them. Okay, there are plenty of resources available for our students to help you get through this. Okay, we know that life happens and we want to get you through this if we can. So that's our technology requirements. And then there's the exam handouts. Now let's talk about the exam handouts. I get really tired of having to repeat the same information on every test that I write. So what I've done instead is to provide you with a set of exam handouts. Now this document is 12 pages long. It is very long. I use this for both 110 and 111. All right. Now, occasionally it does change between the two, but there's a periodic table here. There are the common units, the metric prefixes that go with the units, some conversion factors, conversions here, and there are conversions here, slightly different formats, so, and different numbers in both. This is a list of the common polyatomic ions and their formulas, so the name and their formulas. It has their charges. That will be important as we move forward, but understand that those are there if you don't know what they are. Provide that so that you can work with it. This is a table for Vesper. We'll talk about this after. I think that's on exam 2. So Vesper materials, we'll get to that. These are useful equations and things that you may or may not need. Avogadro's number is on here. It's not listed as Avogadro's number, but it's here. Equations that we use for gas laws are here. Equations that we use for colligative properties are here. Not all of these apply to 110, but they are present for anything that you might need them for. Okay, so make sure that you have checked through this list and know what's there. There's a list of strong acids and strong bases. If it's in this list, it's strong. If it's not strong. This is our fun box. I'll talk about this in detail when we talk about the acid bases, solubility rules. So here are the rules themselves, and then a solubility chart. Okay, so both formats are available. Here's a list of common names. So if I say ammonia, you know that that's NH3 and that's nitrogen trihydride. Okay, so just in case I throw one of those names at you, you know what it is. This diagram right here is what we're going to spend the majority of this course talking about, is what all of this means. But this diagram is provided to you so that you can remember, okay, if I have grams of this material and I need to get to moles, I need to use the molecular weight. Okay, that's what it says on this arrow. So how you need to use that is what we'll talk about in class. But at least now you know, if I want to go from grams to moles, I need a molecular mass to do so. All right, all of this information we will get to eventually. And I'm pretty sure we get to it all in 110. So there's some specific heat capacity. Most of the rest of this is stuff that we use in 111, but it can be useful to you. So like if you see something that's in the weak base list and I ask you, is that a strong base? Then the answer is no. Okay, so use the tools that you have available to make sure that you're aware of what's there. I was going to put thermodynamic values and apparently have not done so. Make a note of that because I need to fix that. You won't need those, but since I noticed it, I need to fix it. Sorry about that. Okay, so those are your exam handouts. Now, here's the thing with the exam handouts. 1, you're expected to have those with you when you take the exam. 2, you need to show them to the camera, all pages, so that I can see that it's just the handout and not anything written on it. Okay, stuff written on it before you go into the exam is academic misconduct. Okay, so there's that. The other thing I would recommend is while you're doing your homework, while you're practicing, use these so you get used to where everything is and you're not just looking at it for the first time when you take that test. Okay, so that's what we're talking about for those. As your exam handouts. Yay, we're almost done, I swear. Now, this link will take you to Alex. I'm not going to click it because if I click it, well, okay, I might as well. It tells me that I can't go in there because it was set up for a different role, i.e. I'm the instructor and this is a student link, so it doesn't work, but that will take you into Alex. When you click that link, it will get you registered for that. You do not have to pay for this, but it links Alex and D2L so that we can get those grades passed between them. There are links for this in several different places. This is not the only place that you will see this. And I'll show you a couple of other ones. Just a minute. Let me duplicate this. And if we come back to the main page, I have put that link right here so that you can get that to that directly. When you go into the content, you'll see that there's a link here in the Alex as well, and I'll talk about it in one other place in just a minute. Okay, so there's Alex. You can see how you get to your textbook. Okay, so within Alex, if you click these 3 lines, that will take you to this list. It will eventually look like this. It won't look like this until you've done the tools tutorial and something else, the initial knowledge check. You'll see the textbook, click that little thing, and it'll say ebook. Now, if you want to print a copy, you can request one, but I don't know if you want one. Come through that, and that. Your assignments are listed right there. That's another way that you can get to your assignments. Do not worry about what is in the pie progress. Do the assignments that you've been given. The pie progress is not something that you need to worry about. There is a grade for that in D2L that is calculated by me at the end of the term and not by this. The Alex is set up based on all the material that they think you should learn during this semester. We don't necessarily do it that way. So we need to make sure that we've done that reflective to the material that you were asked to complete, okay? So that's that. In terms of how the site is structured, you can't see this yet. When we get into the content, there'll be sections for each exam, and then there'll be one for preparation for the final, and then the course documents. Those will be the 5 things that you'll see. And there is a lab associated with this course. You need to make sure that you've done that. Your virtual labs are in Alex, so make sure that you've taken care of that. Okay. And then you'll see your first homework assignments. Now, there's a scavenger hunt. I'll have you take that. The other thing, one of these other things is the acknowledgement activity. When you come in and do this acknowledgement activity, and I'm going to do this right in front of you, it says, I've read the course syllabus. Yep. I've read the lecture schedule. Yep. I have read my addendum. Yep. I've read the course policies. Yep. I acknowledge that there is a lab component in this course and that participation in the lab is required to pass the class. Yep. I've read the notebook format document, which you may not have read at this very moment, but there is one and you can go look at it. It's in here, notebook format. That is that document right there. So yes, I've looked at that. I found the lab manual and reviewed the lab manual upon which the virtual labs were chosen. Yeah, we looked at that. I've located and examined the exam handouts. Yep, I looked at the, I understand that Alex is a required part of the class for both the lecture and lab, and have set up an account on Alex to use through D2L for this course. Now, by this point, you should have done that. So there are a couple of places where it's been mentioned. So yes, that should be true. I acknowledge that a calculator capable of doing scientific notation and base 10 logs, which cannot connect to the internet in any way, is required for this course. I acknowledge that I must notify Dr. Hartley before, during, or within 24 hours of a missed assignment to request additional time on it. Failure to do so in that period of time means I get no opportunity to get those points back. This applies to labs, homework, quizzes, exams, etc. I acknowledge that I am aware that for each hour I spend in class, approximately 1 hour of study time outside of class is required. I also acknowledge that it is expected that for this course, a student would be in class 12 hours in a week due to lecture and lab components. So the total time per week expected is 24 hours. Some students may not require all that time, some may require more than that. And I have acknowledged that. Now, it's not a lot of time. Yeah, actually it is. It's a lab course. Welcome to a lot of time. So that is something that you need to be able to acknowledge. Now, I can submit that. And of course, as long as I've answered that, right, I get 15 of them. So if I acknowledged everything, I get 15. If you didn't, you'll get 15 anyway, but that's beside the point. And that's been submitted. I can say, okay, let me take me back. Let's go back here. And then I can go to content. Boom, I can see everything. And that's because I did that. I got on for an activity. So now you can see everything that's available for this course. So I said I'd walk you through a little of this stuff, and I am now. So underneath each exam, you'll see the topics that are going to be covered. You'll see that they correspond to a lecture number 1, 2, 3. This is the review that goes between those two. I think I've listed as 3R, 4, 5, 6, and then the exam 1 review. Each one of these contains a number of different pieces. So there's the PowerPoint that goes with each of the lectures. So these are what I speak to when I do those lectures. This is a link, an actual video recording of that lecture. You'll see in-class practice. These worksheets are meant to be worked on during that class period. Okay, so if you finish lecture before you're supposed to, this is what you should be working on next. This is the, and then what you'll see is practice. So there's in-class practice that you're supposed to do during class, and then practice that you're supposed to do after that. This practice is written by me. These reflect the kinds of things that I would ask about on a test. The test questions may be exactly like this, or they may contain the same material, okay? Your tests are now designed such that they're 50% multiple guess, true, false, short answer, and 50% fill in the blank, okay? You'll get a breakdown of exactly what each test looks like before you have to take it. That breakdown should come a week before each test, but that's what we're talking about now. All of that material is covered in these practices, but maybe not in the same format, okay? So understand that that's true. And there is worked out answers for each of those, the practice, not necessarily the in-class, but the practice. And if you need worked out answers for the in-class practice, let me know and I can give you that. They're not included here, but and one of the reasons I don't include that is because what I find is that students sometimes say, oh, well, I'll just print it with the answers and I'll look at it and I'll know if I know what to do. That's not how you should handle this, but we'll talk about that later. So that's what you'll find in each one of these things. You'll also see that there's a review. So there are, and I need to reorganize that. So this is the practice that goes for exam 1. There are answers that go with that. So that should be in the other order. And these are questions that I, again, would put on exam 1. Now, I have been known to put one of these questions verbatim on the test. Why it's taken so long to open, but that's what you'll see. Okay, when that link doesn't work, so I need to fix that too. So this is what you'll see, these kinds of things. There's a lot of stuff there because I can ask all kinds of things. So there's that too. And then on some of these, there is a detailed walkthrough for some of those questions so that you can look at that. I tend to do that at the beginning, not necessarily at the end. Right. So there's those. And then there's practice for the final as well. This is practice based on the same questions that you'll see. So stuff like that, okay? And answers for those as well. So that's all the material that you'll see there. Now, one of these, what was the answer? Oh, I was going to show you where the other Alex links are. Sorry. So the one that I went into didn't have any Alex links. Okay. But, and there should be links in here. There should be links within each of these to Alex itself. I'm not sure why they're not showing up. Is it a question of I forgot to put it there? Or is it a question of not showing? So give me a second. Yeah. This should appear there, so I don't understand why it's not appearing there. Structure. Content. Yeah, I don't know why that isn't. Okay, that's weird. So sorry, the deep links are new. I don't know why they're not showing up. I'll have to figure that out. I apologize. But that's everything I wanted to talk about in this general part. So that was way longer than I intended. I am so sorry about that. But I will get this closed out and do the next few. All right, I'll see you guys in a little bit. Thanks.